It's your business. It's your property. Your assets are worth protecting. Blacklight Investigative and Surveillance Services specializes in patrolling and inspecting residential or commercial property against fire, theft, vandalism, terrorism, and illegal activity. People and buildings are monitored to prevent crime. Keep your property, your people, and your assets safe from threat. Our elite staff are dual licensed private investigators and security guards. Blacklight Investigative and Surveillance Services. Go to blacklightiss.com.
The same thing that draws aliens to our planet is the same thing that draws us to others. Exploration, curiosity, sustainability of life, that's why we go. It would make sense as to why they're visiting here.
Travis! Quit playing around, man! Get back here! Travis!
The last thing I remember was this numbing shock. Stunning sort of a feeling. Very powerful.
Get away from me!
I was just out of my mind with fear, just screaming the whole time.
It's been theorized that aliens prefer remote areas because they don't want to attract attention. Whatever it is that they're doing, they would want to do that in a less populated area. There are multiple accounts of the same thing from people from all over the world. People that do not know each other, do not live in the same cultures, and they're all looking up, they're all seeing things in the sky. So it would be naive of us to think that we're
Ryan is one of Canada's leading new UFO investigators. He conducts and oversees UFO investigations on a constant basis and was really taken by his research. He's compiled a tremendous amount of data regarding UFOs in Canada. And just as interesting, he really goes over how UFO investigations are done and what are some of the mistakes that people make when they submit evidence. Note for starters, don't edit your videos or photos before you send them. If you want to hear more follow-up conversation between Ryan and myself, you can go to richardolanmembers.com, where we have a candid conversation on ufology, the paranormal, and more. And remember, while we learn and grow and search for the truth, let's be good to each other.
Welcome to the Observation Deck, a state-of-the-art, one-of-a-kind virtual platform that takes video conferencing to the next level by using avatars to navigate a campus, just like you would in real life. First, you install the application and design your very own unique avatar. Then you're free to explore the various areas of the campus at any time from anywhere. There's so many areas and activities to choose from on the platform. There's a 1,000-seat auditorium, a large expo hall, a movie theater, a nightclub, an art gallery, and even a beach. Come attend a conference, or take a class, or hear a lecture. Meet new friends and interact directly with presenters. It's all right here on the incredible Observation Deck campus. Where in the world will you go?
Have you ever wondered, or maybe just thought to yourself, if there were others just like you? You know, people with extraordinary abilities, psychogenic advancement, and perhaps unique intuitions. Maybe you just wondered if there were other people who experienced unimaginable, unexplained, or even unusual and paranormal events. Are there people who have more questions, more fears than answers? Well, you're not alone. You've never been alone. We believe you. Sign up for EA today by going to tesacan.org/EA. That's TESACAN.org/EA.
day so far. Thank you. And if you're just joining now, welcome. If you like what you hear and what Tessa's doing, Super Chat is a great way to show us your appreciation. Only Super Chat questions will be answered today. So all proceeds are going into the Tessa mission, and half of what we received today is going directly into the Shriners Children's Hospital. It's a great foundation. So if you can donate, please and thank you. If you haven't already, sign up for Experiencers Anonymous at tessacan.org. Your free link to the meeting will be sent to you prior to the meeting today at 3 p.m. Eastern Time. And as your Tessa EA facilitator, I hope to see you there. If you don't know what Experiencers Anonymous is, it is a safe space for experiencers to share stories and events in a group setting. We are building a community of peer support, offering experiencers anonymity. You can share or listen, whatever your comfort level. I hope you'll join and see if you find it helpful to you. Today we have Dave Petrella, who will be sharing some astrology. In this segment, he will share and explore astrology as it is intended to be used. So he will explain how the birth chart and transits relate to extraterrestrial experiences and so much more about our place in the cosmos. Dave Petrella is an astrologer, biologist, spiritual guide, and Oak Island theorist. He's traveled to all 50 states and most of Canada doing research. Dave has studied the world religions and spiritual traditions extensively, along with Eastern medicine, metaphysics, and topics related to extraterrestrial intelligence. So please give a warm welcome to Dave Petrella.
Hey guys, thanks for having me. Okay, so what I'd like to do today, I'm sure some of you probably saw my segment from a few weeks back on Beyond the Tinfoil Hat, and we talked about the Tesla logo. I actually saw it. Ryan was a guest on another show, and I had seen him there, and I said, he said, well, we're still trying to figure out what it means, and I said, well, I think I have a good idea of what that is. And that's because of my base in astrology. And, of course, anytime I see 12, there's 12 signs in the zodiac. Some of you probably know. So I saw 12 around the outside, and of course, it's in a circle pattern, and immediately I keyed into that. And so, in any case, we had about a 3-hour conversation last time, and we talked about the logo. We talked about how it was basically a model of the solar system, the original ancient model of the solar system. And I basically explained 10 levels or 10 dimensions, however you want to talk about it, with that the 12 chairs on the outside being the 8th level in the ancient model. It's called the fixed stars, and ruled by Uranus. And then the 9th level, which would have been represented by the yin yang symbol and potentially also that red cross there, is it's the portal level. It's called the dream world. It's also called the crystalline sea in the ancient model. And then the 10th level is the Anu symbol, which gives us an idea of, in my belief, and I think probably a lot of people in the organization, that it has something to do with Samaria, because we see the uniform there. And of course, that means Anu or God or heaven. So in any case, I guess if we can bring up the first slide, that'd be great, guys. Okay, great. So the conversation last time kind of roughly ended on this slide. And what this is it's a 2-dimensional model of the ancient model of the solar system. And this was used all through the East. The West in the ancient world really was Egypt and Mesopotamia area. So, when people said the West, it wasn't over here in North America. It was Egypt, Mesopotamia, that area. So in any case, it was used all over the continent, all of Asia, and actually eventually it moved into Europe and everything. But this is really the original model. And you know, you can call it the cosmology. This is how people would explain the positioning of the planets. And I went into a little bit about how there's corollaries with the human body, and that each of these levels, each of these 10 levels, it corresponds to, well, a planet, but also to a chakra in the human body. And so it's really one system, and it's unfortunate that it's fallen apart a little bit. It's kind of been broken up and spread around the world in different traditions. But originally, everything was intended to be one system, and it was one cohesive system that actually went in to explain everything. It was, you know, people have heard, I'm sure, as above, so below, and everything up in the stars is a copy of everything down on Earth, and then vice versa. And you know, that it gets into physics, it gets into thermodynamics and all kinds of sciences. Literally everything. It's really the science of light. It's actually a really good way you could call that. That's what the Egyptians called it. Okay, so this slide that you guys see in front of you is the 10 level or 10 dimension solar system model for our solar system. I like to refer to it as the Earth bubble model because it's literally a very large bubble, and each of these concentric circles they're called the spheres. If anyone is familiar with some of the ancient models, how they talked about them. And so it's not just above. You see that midline? That's the Earth plane, actually, that goes horizontally, and so that's where all of us live. And then there's 10. They're also sometimes called vaults. If you guys have heard vaults, the Enochian vaults, this is the same model for that. And actually in the religious texts, they also refer to the system as the vaults above the flat plane Earth. But it doesn't go just above; it also goes below the Earth. And so when you have vaults above and below, they actually end up forming concentric circles. So you have 10 concentric circles around the Earth plane. And that's how this entire system was designed. Over on the right side, you can see I wrote down that as you go up from the Earth plane, the density decreases and the spirituality increases. It allows for a lot more detail and beauty and peace and love and wonderful things the higher up you go from the Earth plane. The Earth plane, the Norse call it Midgard, and so that means the Middle Earth. And it's right in the middle. And that's the reason why they called it that. In the Christian tradition, they call it purgatory. There's tons of other names for it. Anyway, so as you go below the Earth plane, there's actually 10 additional plane there. Well, and I will get into this in the next slide, but the Hindus, the ancient Hindus believed that there were at least 7 denser flat Earth, or it's not really Earth anymore, but flat planes underneath the Earth plane. I believe it's actually 10. You'll see in various systems, people sometimes say 7 to 10 or potentially even more. But in trying to make one system that fits the entire planet, this is really what I settled on. I don't think it can get any more exact than this. Okay, so yeah, we can probably go on to the next slide, I think. All right, guys, so what I did in this slide is I actually, and this is really kind of where we're picking up from the last show on Beyond the Tinfoil Hat. If you guys want to check that out, I would definitely recommend it. So what I did in this slide, and I didn't make this, this is, it's a design that was pre-made. This is the Hindu cosmology, or the ancient Hindu cosmology. And so if we take the first slide and translate it to this slide, you end up with now a 3-dimensional model of the Earth plane and the vaults above and below the Earth. And you can see the concentric aspect, and you can see it forms a bubble. This one does taper. That's potentially actually might be how it actually is. And it might be some of the reason for why we have so many pyramid shapes throughout the ancient world. Because it is, and actually, the last presentation I showed a slide of Chichen Itza and the Mayan ancient site, and that picture had 10 levels on it. It's a pyramid, but it's the same exact model, and they decided to depict it as a pyramid. So, and it's that same idea. The higher up you go, the closer you get to that single point, which is that's the Anu point at the very top. That's it's called in the ancient cosmology. It's called the primum mobile, which means the first movement, and that's where the creation starts, and then it moves. It actually moves down through all the different vaults, all the different heavens, onto the earth plane, and then below the earth plane. And actually, a really good way to think about it, because it's a pretty complex idea, but these are all of these vaults. They're actually different dimensions, and so when you have the top and then the flat Earth plane and then the bottom part of this, you end up having 21 dimensions. And in this system, now, and there's also possibilities for wormholes and traveling from other parts of the universe, things like that too. But for this system, I gave it 21 dimensions, including the Earth dimension. And what you end up with is this diagram. This is really a more accurate diagram because it is in 3D, which is what it's supposed to be. And what you have is a model of what was called, again, in the ancient world, depending on where you went, this is called the cosmic axis. It's called the axis mundi. It's called the world tree. Norse mythology, it's called Yggdrasil. It's all the same. This is the tree. And actually, even in the Garden of Eden story, it's that story probably has like 30 or 40 different possible interpretations, but this is one of them. It's talking about the world tree, which is the center axis. And you can see, all of the dimensions are set along that axis going up and down. And this is really the way that the solar system tries to organize different spirits or different types of people or intelligences or what have you, because you can't have people on a low hell plane, mixing in with people on like the 8th or 9th sphere above the earth, because then it wouldn't be what it's supposed to be anymore. This is the separation that happens. You have to separate types of consciousness in order to be able to even preserve that type of dimension, if that makes sense. Okay, so this is the model. It's in 3D. Obviously the Tessa picture for the logo is some of the ways that Ryan's interpreted it is obviously it's in a 3D form, being able to see what it looks like when it spins, the potential that it's a craft and things like that. And either way, this is the model really that we want to be looking at. You can look up upwards from the earth plane, and you can also look downwards from the earth plane. And what's interesting about this, and this is something me and Ryan have talked about over the past couple weeks, is that you could technically, when you look at the Tesla logo, you could be looking from the bottom looking up, or it could also technically be interpreted as being on the top looking down. And to me, either way is valid, because you guys can see. I hope that this is a mirror image of the ancient cosmology. Is that you have the above portion, in the middle is the earth plane, and then the below portion, those are the hells, and of course above is the heavens. And so, depending on which way you want to interpret it, I believe the Tesla logo will cover everything. It covers every possible combination so far that I've seen. And even including some of the ancient organizations and stuff like that we can see in there, with the potential Templar cross and all this stuff. Really, I think what it is trying to bring the world together. It's trying to bring the original tradition together, which you really have to understand that ancient cosmology, along with all of the other world traditions that some of them chose to focus on one aspect or another aspect, but really it's all of them. And it's just a wonderful model to see how everything fits in. The other thing I want to say before we go to the second half of the presentation, which is going to be primarily astrology, is that astrology is a way. Well, I already kind of talked about a little bit, but it's a way to separate types of consciousness. It's also a way to deliver very exact karma to different spirits and different types of consciousness. It's also a way to give very specific gifts to any type of consciousness or any type of being. And it's really, it's kind of like a box. Astrology kind of does put you into a box. We do have free will, but I would say that a lot of that free will happens on more of a quantum level, as opposed to a strictly physical level, which is kind of, what I'm alluding to now is really the physical level. And so as we go into the birth chart, which will be in a second, in the next slide, I just want you guys to see that what you're going to end up with is it's a system to advance beings or to demote beings, whichever way it is. And ultimately, the person behind the steering wheel is, of course, us. It's not just humans, it's everything. It's all types of beings and all types of consciousness, including, extraterrestrial intelligence. They would be in there, including demonic influences. They would be in there. Everything is in here. The system, it correlates everything together. And so, it's an opportunity to understand a couple things. One, how this entire system is set up, so we can try to get that straight. One thing I'm very, very keen on is to make sure I'm including all of the traditions of the world. Everyone has a piece of this puzzle, and all we have to do is put it back together. And I'm really excited for that, because this is the opportunity to do that for sure. So anyway, so it's going to allow us to understand the solar system, how this solar system was designed, because it's a design system. And I'm about to prove that even more when we go into astrology. It's a design system, and also to help us to understand. That's kind of like the large picture, and then the smaller picture is on the individual scale, which is going to help people to understand themselves better, essentially, and to understand maybe there's a reason, maybe there's a scientific reason behind, or an astrological reason behind why someone feels a certain way or someone acts a certain way around another specific person, the propensities people have. All of those things are covered within astrology. And before I learned astrology, I was a scientist first. So I studied biology for a long time. So anytime something new is presented to me, I have to be able to understand it really fully and clearly. Then I want to see the evidence, and then I'm going to draw what I call working conclusion, which is it's as good as I can get it at the moment. And that's always how I live. I'm going to do the best I can right now. We're going to get as close as we can. If someone has some other information, I'm glad to listen to it and to try to integrate that. Or, if it somehow throws it off, then that's great. The more information, the better. The more people we can include, the better. We're all in this together. So it's something that we're all trying to figure out. So it's going to allow us to understand the larger system, the smaller system, which is individually. There's also a lot of it has to.
Hey, Dave.
A lot. Yes. Yep.
Sorry to interrupt. I just realized that the mic isn't on when I'm in the back screen, but there's a super chat. So
okay.
So the question is, in Hindu cosmology, is human consciousness the uppermost realm, and what does the lower realm snake represent?
The lower realm. What is it?
So in Hindu cosmology, is human consciousness the uppermost realm, and what does the lower realm snake represent?
Okay, you said snake.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Well, what I would say is that there's something that happens where, depending on what plane you're on, or which dimension you're in, or which vault you're in, you can bring in consciousness from other dimensions while you're in a specific dimension. So humans right now, and actually I know that we just can't see it, but I feel very strongly there's humans represented in all of these dimensions, and you're going to have different bodies. We're going to be looking different. If you're in the hells, you're going to be very dense. There's no really no light there, so it's kind of a scary place to be. The energy is very low. And then the other side of that, of course, as we go up, it gets the bodies get lighter and they get more radiant, everything like that. So what I would say is that most humans, in my opinion, on the Earth plane, are pulling their energy from, let's see, I would say the second. I would say, well, if not really if you're pulling your energy only from the first heaven, which is the first vault that's ruled by the moon, you're basically in like a coma. So most humans are doing better than that. And I'm thankful for that. I mean, we all should be thankful for that. Most humans are pulling in information and consciousness from the second and third heavens, which is represented by Mercury and Venus. And those are characterized by kind of the animalistic mind would be the second dimension. The third dimension is the emotional dimension. And most humans, in my opinion, are living between those two. So we're living on this plane, but a lot of people are pulling from the second and third for their consciousness. And then there's a few of us, well, maybe more than a few, but if you're pulling from the fourth heaven or the fourth level of consciousness, you're pulling from the heart. And what that looks like is that you don't make emotional decisions. You make decisions based on what is correct and what is the right thing to do. Service towards others, that's a much higher vibration. So for instance, if you were living in the fourth heaven, which is, that's the sun, that's the dimension of the sun. If you were living there, you could technically be pulling even higher energies from higher vaults or higher heavens. You can also be pulling from lower. You might be pulling from the earth dimension. So within all of these dimensions, and there's probably are caps. You know, I don't know. I haven't really, I guess, been to some of these dimensions, maybe in previous life, I'm sure. But my understanding is that, you know, all combinations are possible. Is basically what I want to say. You can be on any of these planes, theoretically, and you can be pulling your consciousness from or accessing entities or communication from any of the other planes or dimensions. I hope that makes sense. It's a pretty involved topic, but okay. So we can probably go on to the first astrology slide, guys, if you're ready with that one. Okay, so what we have here, this is called the birth chart, and it's also, it's called a horoscope. So what that means is that it's the conditions in the sky, which means where the planets are. There's some other elements as well involved with that, and it also talks about the planet's relation to the 12 zodiac signs at a specific time of day, at a specific location on the planet. It's very, very exact. I do astrology 100% mathematically. I do have I have a very strong intuition. You can't really do it if you don't. But nothing I say is not actually in that chart. If you guys can see it up close, you'll see numbers. It shows the degrees. Each of the 12 signs has 30 degrees, and so it shows you the planets, which degree they are within that sign, which basically, roughly, there's 12 signs, there's 12 months. So roughly each month has 30 days. And so that's how the year is broken up. And it's based on 360. And we do live in a 365.25 year, day cycle a year. And then you have the fourth year as a leap year. I think that originally it was designed to be 360 days. I think we're living in potentially a fractured dimension, which would mean that things are slightly skewed. Because why would you create a perfect circle and then have it be 365 degrees instead of 360? To me, that makes no sense. You can technically divide it however you want, but if you divide it by 360, you have perfect. I mean, everything fits in perfectly. 12 is really wonderful for that. 12 is a lot better than 10, actually, for that, in terms of things fitting into each other without fractions. And that's what you want, really, if you're trying to build a really cohesive system. Okay, so in any case, this particular chart, I don't know if you guys can see it, but up in the top, and this is really how a chart looks if you've never seen a horoscope before or a birth chart. The top left corner, you're going to see the data, which is what is put into the software. And so up there you have the day, of course, the year, the time, the location, and you need all of these elements in order to have a full chart. If you're missing, for instance, if you're missing the time, then you're going to miss, you can't learn about your ascendant, and you also cannot learn about the houses. And these are very important things in astrology. So this particular chart is, it's not a birth chart only because what I did is I did it for the day. So I did it for today. This is the chart for today from actually at the time we started my portion of the broadcast, 1:30 p.m. in Ontario, and actually from basically where you guys are broadcasting from. This is the chart above your heads right now. And what you end up with is, like I said, over on the left, you got the data, and then just below that with all the blue kind of writing there, and to the left of that, it shows the planets and where they are, what signs they're in, the degrees, all that stuff. And so I primarily, I'll go over there, if I need to quickly, but primarily I'm looking at the circle. And so this is, really one of the interpretations of the Tesla diagram, specifically the part of it that has the 12 cogs around it. Because as you guys can see, if, for people who know astrology, there's 12 signs. For people who don't, I'll just kind of explain this really quickly. If you look around the outside, the very, very outside, you're going to see multicolor symbols. And those are, you can call those glyphs. And they all represent, it's a symbol that represents one of the 12 signs of the zodiac. And so that on the outside, good way to look at that is it's like a dial. And so that outside wheel is actually turning as if you were turning like a radio knob. That would be a good reference point for that. And so it turns based on the ascendant, which is the time. So that outside wheel changes. And so you can have, in this case, Aries is all the way at the left. You see the right, at the left, the red ram's horns there that represents Aries. Okay, so Aries doesn't have to be there. Now, in the chart of the solar system, yeah, actually, that is where Aries is supposed to be, because that's where the spring equinox starts. That's where the year starts in one system of it. But Aries could technically be at the bottom if you twisted it that way, depending on the time of day. It could be anywhere along that outside, and so that changes a lot of the chart. It changes what are called the houses. And I'll just go into that now since we're talking about it. So if you look at the circle, you're going to see a bunch of black lines that start from the center and they go out towards the outside. And so those black lines actually denote the house, the specific house that you're talking about. And there's 12 houses. There's one for each sign of the zodiac. And actually, this is what me and Ryan talked about too, because I thought that the 12 seats or the 12 cogs on the outside of the Tesla logo basically it's either the sign, the traditional sign to me, or it's the houses. And the houses correlate to the signs. There's also 12 houses. And so technically each one of the houses has a sign that, rules that house traditionally. But again, that can also be mixed up a lot depending on that outside dial, depending on how that's turned. But over on the very far left, you have what's called the first house. And then that actually goes counterclockwise. You see the little numbers on the very center of the circle. It goes counterclockwise all the way 1 through 12. And it ends where it's back where it started in the 12th house. And then, of course, the first house starts again. And so if you guys want more specifics on the houses, we did that whole breakdown on the previous program we did, Beyond the Tinfoil Hat. And it's important because it tells you about the facets of your life. These are like pieces of a pie, really. It's what it looks like. And it tells you about, what is your personality like? What are your values like? What are your finances like? What is your communication style like? What is your home life like? And all these different topics are covered with the houses. Okay, so now over at the very far left, you have what says AC. AC refers to the ascendant. Now, the ascendant is your personality, and you can't know that. If this was, I'll just say this really quickly. This particular chart is a horoscope. It's an event day. It's for today. But if someone was born in the same town as you guys are broadcasting from, then this would also be their birth chart, their personal birth chart. For everyone else, this is what's called a transit, which means it's the local conditions. And the local conditions also affect your own birth chart, even if it's not your birthday. So over on the left, you see AC, which means the Ascendant, and the Ascendant is in Aries. You can tell that because Aries is right there with the red glyph with the horns. That's the ram. And then that sets up the rest of the houses. At the very top, you have what's called MC. That's the midheaven. The midheaven is your career and your achievement. And what that ends up being is a really good indication of, what kind of career you do best in, what kind of situation you do best in for a career and for achieving things, for having a public face, stuff like that. So that's a very important, it kicks off the 10th house. It's a very important point in the chart. And then the other, there's probably, I'd say about 2 more things we can talk about here, at least for initially. It's really just an intro, this is just the base level information with this. There's literally nothing that you can't do with this kind of information for a day or for a person, depending on what you're talking about. Okay, so just inside the 12 signs, that the 12 colored signs on the outside, just inside that, you have another series of symbols, and the symbols on the inside of that are actually black are the planets, and there's actually a few other things in there. There's what's called Chiron. Chiron it's called the wounded healer, which is it's a dual gift. It's the greatest gift and the greatest weakness. You can't have one without the other. So it's one way and everyone has Chiron. It's an asteroid way out in the outer solar system. Everyone has this, and you can't say, oh, hey, I like the good part of it, but I don't like the bad part of it. You have to actually take both at the same time. And some of these things, if you guys are starting to follow this a little bit, it gives indications for what your life is going to be like. And it's partly based on what you chose before you incarnated. Part of it's based on karma. Part of it's based potentially on what some of the divine intelligences think would help you in this life. There's so many different combinations. Some people come here because they're curious. Some people come here as healers or protectors, or everything's on the table. And so you got Chiron in there. That's that key looking symbol right next to Aries on the far left. Okay, and then you've got the other one that's not a planet is called the North Node, also called the True Node, also called the Ascendant Node. And that's the one basically the far bottom, like middle left quadrant. And it looks like an upside down horseshoe. And so what that is that's your goal in life. And you're trying to direct yourself towards that. One way or another, you're going to get there. Sometimes the polarity can flip, it's a whole different topic. But the polarity, if the polarity inside the person's body flips in their mind, then you're going to end up exhibiting the opposite sign of what's indicated in your birth chart. It's very important to know that because they're on an axis with each other. It's not that you're an Aries, it's that you're an Aries with the potential to flip into Libra, which is the opposite of Aries, if your energy is polarized in a way that's not helpful, which it's going to feel like you're off balance if that happens. So in any case, the Ascendant Node is the goal in life. It's really to be able to incorporate and express and understand the aspects of a different sign. Well, it could technically be the same sign. I mean, everything's possible, but most people I've seen, most charts I've seen, it's a different sign that they're trying to incorporate. But anytime if someone's trying to figure out, oh, what is it that I need to be fulfilled or feel fulfilled, you want to follow that Ascendant Node, and that's going to get you there every time. I mean, if the best thing that's for is if someone doesn't have direction in life, or they're trying to figure out how they want to go about life, you look at the Ascendant Node for sure. Okay, and then the last thing I want to talk about in a basic a chart or horoscope is you'll see there's a bunch of things that look like pieces of spaghetti, and they're red, some are blue, and they're up at the top there, kind of on the inside of that circle. And what those are called, they're called aspects. And an aspect is an angle between different planetary bodies, or different, some in the case of like Ascendant Node or something. Or there's another one that's actually not on this chart. It's called the Dark Moon, which is called Lilith. It's not an actual planetary body. It's a representative energy. it might actually be a planetary body. We might not be able to see it. That's another aspect to keep in mind with that in our spectrum. So anyway, so what happens is they form the different planets on the inside. They form angles with each other, and these angles, it's 1 degree per day. So it's actually pretty basic mathematics. This part's pretty basic mathematics, and you end up with things that are called trines. Trine is a 120-degree angle, or 120 days between the two bodies, or what you're trying to understand. And then you have what's called a sextile. That's a 60-degree angle, or 60 days in between. Both of those aspects are generally considered to be positive. The trine is like a superpower. It's something that everyone watches you do an activity or be a certain way, and they're just amazed. They can't believe that you can do it. It's like not even human. So when you have a trine, that's like a serious gift, generally. And then the sextile is it's like a bonus. It's not nearly as powerful as the trine, but it's still good. I mean, it's very helpful. It gives you kind of some perks and a little bit of help along the way, along the path of life. Okay, then you have what are called conjunctions. A conjunction is when the two planets are right next to each other, and you can see that actually at the top, very top, just to the right, you'll see the sun, the little circle with the dot in it. It's the sun, and then just to the left of that is Mercury. And let's see here, they're sitting within 6 degrees of each other, and that's close. That's easily close enough to feel an influence. I usually don't go past, when I talk about conjunctions, I usually don't go past about 9 degrees. The tighter they're close to each other, if it's like 1 degree apart in the sky, that's going to be a lot more powerful because the energies are amplifying each other. They're sitting next to each other, and sometimes they're literally right on top. There's no degrees separating them, and that's like, basically stand back, because that's going to be very, very powerful, very explosive, helpful. Well, it can be helpful. It can also be, destructive. If you have, for instance, if you have a conjunction between Venus and Mars, that's pretty difficult because Venus and Mars are, in astrology, they're opposed to each other. Venus is the principle of love. Mars is the principle of war. So if you have those two things sitting right next to each other, it's this constant back and forth, and it's difficult because they're very, very polarized ideas. So, again, it could be anything, and in fact, any of these things can be either way. We live in a dualistic world. It was designed that way. The hot and cold aspect, or the light and dark aspect, or whatever you want to call it. It's all the one, and then plus the opposite of that. So with astrology, you can get any of those things at any time for any reason. And that's where a lot of the intuition has to come in, because it is mathematics, but you have to know where to look. You have to know what you're looking for. You have to be able to understand if someone has a question, how to work with that question. If there's a question out there, I can answer it. If you guys wouldn't mind reading it. Oh, okay.
Yeah, right now we don't have any questions. We're only taking questions for super chats, but I will take the opportunity to say thank you to, where was it? There was a super sticker. I saw a super sticker earlier, but oh yeah, right here. Where is that? Show it. Oh, it's not popping up. There is a super sticker I saw in there, so thank you for that. Who sent that? There it is, right there. RVML Resource Center. Thank you for that super sticker.
Great. Thanks, guys. Okay, so and then the other thing I didn't mention is that there's something called an opposition. That's when the planets are directly or close to directly opposite from each other, and when you have that, it's depending on which planets they are, or which aspects, not which aspects, but which paradigms that it's representing, you can end up with, usually it's difficult. I'll put it that way. Oppositions are not necessarily ideal, but they can form a counterpoint to understand something that otherwise, if they weren't set up opposite from each other, you wouldn't have that perspective. So it can also be very helpful. And the same thing with, that's 180 degrees. And then there's one called the square, which is 90 degrees. And squares are actually a little bit of both at the same time. They're difficult because it's like a T-bone car accident. You hit directly at 90 degrees. It's serious damage. So and when I talk about relationship matching and things like that, if you have two people who have a square to each other, their suns are at a square to each other, um, it's basically like you're being like prodded all the time, 24/7. It's like you can't look away, you can't ignore the person, but you're also like really intrigued at the same time because it's actually a very stimulating experience. And that from that stimulation, it can bring a lot of good insights. But for me personally, I found that it's always both at the same time with the square. A lot of astrologers might say, "Oh, a square is bad." Well, everything's dualistic. You really have to work with the data. You have to feel it for yourself, and you'll notice that for instance, I'll actually just give an example from my own life. I went through my square because you'll go through your squares on a yearly basis, twice on a yearly basis because it's 90 degrees. I went through my square recently, and I had the most amazing information coming in, but it also was like destroying me at the same time. So it was exhausting. It was very difficult, but I was also getting huge information, positive information from that. So and I didn't make that up. I looked. I'm like, okay, well, last week wasn't like this. Well, last week I wasn't in the square. I wasn't in my square. So I'm very careful not to infer ahead of something, because if you say to someone, "Oh, something's going to happen," then you know what, they might be thinking about it so much that maybe it does happen. But there's something different where it happens independently of that person's viewpoint. And when that happens, you can basically call that good science, because no matter what you're thinking, it's still going to happen. Okay, so that's a basic horoscope, guys. Like I said, this represents today at the beginning of this broadcast at 1:30 p.m. local Eastern time in North America. But if someone happened to be born at the same time as I made this chart, that would be their birth chart. And for everyone else, it's what's happening in the sky above Ontario, at 1:30 p.m. today. Okay, we got one more slide here. Now, before I get into this one, and by the way, this is literally the most fascinating chart I've ever seen in my life. I've done thousands and thousands of charts. I do at least one chart a day, at least minimum. And so what I wanted to say was that if you guys noticed the chart before this, the aspects, which are the spaghetti type things in the center of this that form the angles between the planets, the aspects in the previous chart were, there were good things represented there. I think there were a few trines, probably a couple sextiles, definitely some conjunctions and things like that. But, the pattern that it formed was pretty uninspiring. Now, this chart, actually, I'm going to say one more thing before I get into this. For the experiencers out there, I know a lot of you guys are experiencers, and I support all of you. I do believe in extraterrestrials. I've had lots of experiences myself. I've seen countless things in the sky to the point where I was like, you know what? I think I'm good. I had 5-6 years where it would happen at least like once a month. And then, I tried to start to understand what's going on. Perspective's important. The quantum world's important. There's a lot of stuff that's important to understand that. But one of the things that I can do is that I can pull up someone's birth chart, and which is, the conditions at the moment you were born, and it depends at the time and what part of the world you're in. You need all of those things, because the planets are forming specific angles to the Earth on that date and time, and that angle is what creates the parts of your chart and the personalities and stuff like that. So anyway, if someone's an experiencer and they say, I just want anything that helps me to understand what is going on here. Is there a system behind this? Like, can I understand why is it me and why is it not someone else? Well, the first thing that I would do as an astrologer, and like I said, I do a lot of stuff with general spirituality too. So it's not just purely astrology, but astrology it's the science that supports the entire solar system. This is the grid work, the hidden grid work behind everything that happens on Earth. So if you want to understand any phenomenon on Earth, you really want to get a good feel for this, because the specific days, things happen on specific days. Some of the reasons why people have so many gifts is because what aspects they have in their chart, all this stuff. And it's supported, like I said, I've done thousands and thousands of charts. Obviously, I'm not the first astrologer. This has been in place since Mesopotamia and probably before that. Okay, so if I pull someone's birth chart, I can look at the aspects. I can look at the placement of the planets and which house they're in, which sign they're in, and I can come up with some really good references for why me specifically, or why at this time specifically. It gives people a good understanding for their life goal, their life mission, if they want to continue to have communication. You know, I fully believe that if you, for instance, if you really like to have extraterrestrial communication, great. But if you don't want to, you can express that to the universe. And if you say it sincerely and you have your one pointedness in your mind and your heart, you'll get that. So for all the people out there who are saying, you know, I had some experiences and it was, you know, a torment, or it was a difficult experience. Well, you know, you're the one driving your astrological chart. You're driving your timeline at the top level. So you can express that, and you know, it will, if you're doing it with intention, it will come to fruition for you. So anyway, what I would do is I'd look at someone's birth chart, and then the second thing I would pull up, because I'm going to be looking at two right next to each other, I would be looking at the day of the experience. So it's the day, like I said, the day, the year, the time, and the location. You might have had your experience in a different location from where you were born, in which case the angles are going to be different, you know, because you're in a different part of the world. But what I'd be looking for is how things match up between your birth chart and the day of the chart, of the experience that you had. And in this case, this chart is the day of the Pascagoula extraterrestrial event in 1973. October 11th, 1973 is about 9 p.m. Pascagoula, Mississippi, USA. And, you know, anyone who's an extraterrestrial enthusiast, I'm sure, is aware of this event. It was a huge event. One of in my opinion, one of the best supported events. There was also a strange thing that happened. It was like a sonic boom that started in Illinois, went all the way to Pittsburgh at the same time this was happening. And I mean, when I pulled up this chart, I literally could not believe what I was seeing, because I've never seen a perfectly geometric pattern on the in the center of this between the aspects. So, you know, immediately the first thing I'm thinking, of course, when I think extraterrestrials, I generally think of portals. If you want to travel large distances or even shorter distances, the portal is probably your best option most of the time. So these planets are creating a perfect polygon, you know, a 5-sided polygon right around the center of the sky. And what the other thing that's happening that's very striking is that the points of this polygon are obviously specific planets, but it's not just that, because the planets that are sitting at the points are not really well matched for the sign that they're sitting in. So each of these points is creating friction. Actually, it's creating tension in the sky on the day of this happened. Over on the left side, you've got Mars that's in Taurus. It's not really a good place for Mars to be generally, because Taurus is ruled by Venus, which is the opposite of Mars. Bottom left, you have Cancer. You have Saturn sitting in Cancer, and Saturn rules the opposite sign of Cancer, which is Capricorn. There's problems there. And then it just keeps going. I mean, the top right point, you have Jupiter sitting in Aquarius. Jupiter is ruled by Saturn. Aquarius is ruled by Saturn. And there's an eternal battle between Saturn and Jupiter. And we just went through that on the solstice of 2020. They supposedly passed the torch. Jupiter passed the torch to Saturn. They were sitting right next to each other in the sky. Really big event. And then the bottom right, you've got Pluto at that bottom right point of the pentagon. And Pluto's in Libra, which again is not a great place for it to be, because Libras are very peaceful people generally. But when you got Pluto in there, which is trying to explode everything and transform everything, it's not really really well matched for Libra. So far, all four of those points, there's issues. There's very noticeable issues. And I maybe see one. I see one, maybe two of something like that in someone's chart. I've never seen four. I've never ever seen four in a chart like this. And then the very far right point is very interesting. It's where it's pointing, really. Pentagon looks like it's pointing. It's pointing directly at Neptune. and Venus is actually in conjunction with Neptune right there. So, Neptune is the dream world. It's a very high dimension. It's the ninth. It rules. Well, actually, let me think about this. Yeah, it rules the ninth level, or the ninth heaven, the ninth dimension. And so, if you're having something supernatural come to Earth, you want to be looking generally at much higher energy gradients. Now, some of the aliens can also be coming from much lower energy gradients. Either way, I'm very convinced that this is actually formed a portal. And now, of course, this goes to referencing the Tesla logo again, which me and Ryan have talked about. The center design with the yin yang and the Templar symbol is one way of conceptualizing a portal, and it's at the right level. That's the ninth level. In this chart, I'm seeing Neptune being the focal point for these aspects, pointing at Neptune on the right, which is in Sagittarius. And the other thing I want to mention too, because there's one more, at least one more big important point for this chart for the day of the Pascagoula event, is that actually the moon and the sun are almost directly opposed to each other, within 1 degree's opposition of each other, which means they're at opposite ends of the sky. And it's very difficult if you have the sun and the moon opposed from each other. Basically, it's like a standstill. There's no action taken because every time you try to take a step, the moon forces you back in this particular aspect. So there's at least 5 issues in this chart. In addition to that, it's creating a portal. Very obviously, it's very striking, right at the center. It's like an artist came in and drew this polygon. It's unbelievable, and it's pointing at an access point, which is Neptune. That's the dream world. They're coming. It might even be Neptune when it goes beneath the Earth. Actually, that'd probably be my guess, because this wasn't necessarily a positive experience. Actually, it wasn't positive at all, as described by the experiencers. And so you guys will remember from the first 2 diagrams that each level is above and below. So Neptune, at nighttime, or you can conceive it that way, it goes beneath the Earth plane, and then the ninth sphere beneath the Earth, which is a powerful, negative position to be in. Whereas when it's above, in the ninth sphere above the Earth, it's a very positive place to be in the dream world. Everything's dualistic. So in any case, if I had compared someone's birth chart with this event, and I actually tried to, I couldn't find all their data, but that's what you would see. You would see, not only you'd see there's issues with the day, but you would see there's issues between the day and their chart. And it might explain, I think it actually would explain, why they were the ones that experienced it, as opposed to someone else, being in the right place at the right time, being able to view it, all of these things. You can see that.
So, hey Dave, I threw in a super chat near the end, and because I was just thinking this the whole time, and then we'll get CC in to close the show. But this is what I'm thinking the whole time, because we haven't discussed this yet. But are you suggesting that the Tesla map is a star chart for, and if so, have you figured out what date and time that would be?
Oh, for the Tesla diagram specifically?
Yeah. Is it a time?
Well, you know what? Actually, that's a phenomenal question. That actually might explain why, when I was looking at the outer chairs or the outer cogs, that I wasn't seeing a perfect matchup to the schematic of how the houses should be positioned and how the signs should be positioned. I was thinking about that yesterday, actually, Ryan. That if we can identify the 12 houses, they might somehow be in a different order. That might reference a particular period of time in history. I can start working with that. It's very interesting. We might be able to see, for me, this would be the creation event of the solar system. That's what I'd be looking at. And, I'd have to run some charts and stuff, but there's a lot of options. So that's it for my presentation, guys. I went through the 4 slides. If there's any, last question or anything, I'd be happy to take it. And I, kind of gave you guys a rundown of basic astrology, the events between what you can do with in an experience or date versus your birth chart. There's so much you can look into for that, about why it's you, why that day, all the stuff like this. And the sky's the limit, literally. So.
CC, you have to unmute yourself. Sorry.
Sorry about that. Hi, Dave. Where can people find you? That was great.
Thank you. Yep. Well, if you guys want to find me, Facebook is generally the best place. You want to look under Dave Petrella, which you'll see my picture up there. It says astrology, biology, spiritual guidance, all that at the top. So you can find me on Facebook. You can find me on Instagram, Dave Petrella 12. I have a page there. You're welcome to message me in either of those places. You can send me an email if you want. That's fine. DavePetrella@hotmail.com. And my last name is P like Peter, Etrella.
Amazing. Thanks so much. Well, everyone, just to remind you, to enter the Experiencer mystery box, you need to collect all 8 letters to build the magic word, and 1 letter will be revealed in each segment of E-Day schedule. So you need to unscramble the letters and make that magic word and submit your best guess to admin@tessacan.org email to enter for your chance to win. The magic letter for this segment is U, as in universe. U. It's not too late to collect all your magic letters by watching video replays, and good luck. Just a reminder, too, that Experiencers Anonymous is right after this at 3 p.m. Eastern Time. The link to the meeting will be sent out shortly, probably around 2:45. So pay attention. We hope that you'll join us on Observation Deck for some discussion and explore this virtual world that has so much to offer, and you'll just have to see it for yourself. Stay tuned for the next broadcast that will be starting at 5 p.m. Eastern Time, and that will be Where the Past Has Hardly Stopped Breathing with Alex Mistretta, Tessa's resident cryptozoologist expert. We hope to see you there. Stay tuned. Heat the world.
It's your business. It's your property. Your assets are worth protecting. Blacklight Investigative and Surveillance Services specializes in patrolling and inspecting residential or commercial property against fire, theft, vandalism, terrorism, and illegal activity. People and buildings are monitored to prevent crime. Keep your property, your people, and your assets safe from threat. Our elite staff are dual licensed private investigators and security guards. Blacklight Investigative and Surveillance Services. Go to blacklightiss.com.
The same thing that draws aliens to our planet is the same thing that draws us to others. Exploration, curiosity, sustainability of life. That's why we go. It would make sense as to why they're visiting here.
Travis! Quit playing around, man. Get back here. Travis!
The last thing I remember was this numbing shock. Stunning sort of a feeling. Very powerful.
Get away from me!
I was just out of my mind with fear, just screaming the whole time.
It's been theorized that aliens prefer remote areas because they don't want to attract attention. Whatever it is that they're doing, they would want to do that in a less populated area. There are multiple accounts of the same thing from people from all over the world. People that do not know each other, do not live in the same cultures, and they're all looking up, they're all seeing things in the sky. So it would be naive of us to think that we're
Ryan is one of Canada's leading new UFO investigators. He conducts and oversees UFO investigations on a constant basis and was really taken by his research. He's compiled a tremendous amount of data regarding UFOs in Canada. And just as interesting, he really goes over how UFO investigations are done and what are some of the mistakes that people make when they submit evidence. Note for starters, don't edit your videos or photos before you send them. If you want to hear more follow-up conversation between Ryan and myself, you can go to richardolanmembers.com, where we have a candid conversation on ufology, the paranormal, and more. And remember, while we learn and grow and search for the truth, let's be good to each other.
Welcome to the Observation Deck, a state-of-the-art, one-of-a-kind virtual platform that takes video conferencing to the next level by using avatars to navigate a campus, just like you would in real life. First, you install the application and design your very own unique avatar. Then you're free to explore the various areas of the campus at any time from anywhere. There's so many areas and activities to choose from on the platform. There's a 1,000-seat auditorium, a large expo hall, a movie theater, a nightclub, an art gallery, and even a beach. Come attend a conference or take a class or hear a lecture. Meet new friends and interact directly with presenters. It's all right here on the incredible Observation Deck campus. Where in the world will you go?
Have you ever wondered, or maybe just thought to yourself, if there were others just like you? You know, people with extraordinary abilities, psychogenic advancement, and perhaps unique intuitions. Maybe you just wondered if there were other people who experienced unimaginable, unexplained, or even unusual and paranormal events. Are there people who have more questions, more fears than answers? Well, you're not alone. You've never been alone. We believe you. Sign up for EA today by going to tesacan.org/EA. That's TESACAN.org/EA.